It was a chilly day outside, and with energy restricted to necessities, heating, air and water purification, and so on, the group had assembled inside the Wanderer's shop, examining all the fascinating items he'd brought from other realms. Nilara adored the books, ancient plant pulp pages bound in leather from numerous different animal species, the incredible sights they described so matter-of-factly, the diverse beliefs and cultures and tales they contained. On this particular day, however, she discovered something unfamiliar. "Hara Wanderer," she asked, "why are my translators unable to decode this?" The Wanderer made a face that her HUD helpfully identified as indicating surprise. "How on earth did that end up out there? I was certain I had it securely locked away." Quickly handing over the book like an obedient Kelvic, Nilara continued her questioning all the same. "But what exactly is it? It seemed too structured to be mere nonsense." The Wanderer let out a breath, a gesture she was familiar enough with to feel irritated when her HUD notified her once more of its significance. "Your care-fathers probably won't be pleased if they learn about this, but I know it's unwise to dismiss your inquiries. It's an artifact from humans, a book belonging to that ancient and intriguing civilization." "What is human?" Humans were the initial ones. They endured the first great barriers to life and were toughened by them. Prior to their emergence, no sentience existed, no awareness, at least not in this plane of existence. Initially, it was fortune, the occurrence of an ideal planet, with an ideal sun, and the emergence of sentience just barely early enough to escape their planet before it could no longer sustain them. But then they faced the malevolent barriers. Whether these barriers were conscious or not, we don't know, but whether by design or by nature, these barriers aimed for the eradication of life, particularly sentient life, and the most formidable of these was called entropy. At this point, all of the children had assembled to hear the tale. Nobody recounted a story quite like the Wanderer. Humans had been molded by the first barriers, conditioned to be the finest. They were as powerful as the Braxian. "Zorths are stronger," chimed in Pelkor. "Indeed." The Wanderer's voice had an unusual quality, though Nilara struggled to pinpoint the exact emotion he was expressing, and their speed matched that of the Phalix. "Nivex are faster." Indeed, that tone, whatever it was, grew more pronounced. They were capable of healing just as swiftly and effectively as the Cirith. "Jolter." Indeed. Ah, that was it, frustration. However, no living creature today could excel in all of those areas simultaneously, and more importantly, no creature today possesses their stamina. Humans were capable of marching for weeks on end, resting for only a few refills each night. Some could even go 3 full days without any sleep, though their alertness did tend to decline even with chemical assistance. Even more remarkable, though, was their unrelenting curiosity, which nourished their minds in a way that overshadows the people who exist today. But do not confuse their greatness with perfection. They certainly didn't. Through technology, they elevated their capabilities above and beyond. This is, as any educator would say, the purpose of technology. However, as with everything, they did it better and more intensely and swiftly than people today. They perceived their downfall in failure, and humanity was not a species that would falter. For all their power, however, they possessed one significant flaw. Many of them were weak in character. They were created to exist in a world without excess, where failing to defend your own with utmost ferocity could mean losing everything. Their evolution occurred too rapidly to overcome these primal instincts, and so they did something that would seem inconceivable today. They justified their instincts. They battled one another with a ferociousness that even the Graven and Lumina, whose very existences are opposed to each other, could not muster. Yet so powerful was the human drive to endure, to persist and to prevail, that as their fate, their great downfall at the hands of entropy and the other malevolent barriers drew near, they discovered unity. And if the barriers were conscious, if they experienced or reasoned at all, I am certain they felt fear, as the combined tenacity and defiance of humanity was focused on the barriers, stronger than any the barriers could retaliate with. They labored, united in purpose, to dismantle them, and not just the ones that threatened them, but the lesser barriers they had already overcome. I am unsure, but I believe they had various motives for this. Some did it out of vengeance, or for the satisfaction of knowing that what once menaced them was now so trivial as to be swept aside. Some, though the noblest among them, did it so that more minds might emerge, perhaps gentler minds. No longer would entropy doom all, so no longer were the lesser barriers necessary to mold a mind that could combat it. If they were so invincible, what happened to them? Nilara felt irritated by Pelkor's interjections and his lack of respect, but nonetheless it was a valid query. They rose to a higher plane or a higher state. They are peculiar creatures, beyond even the comprehension or grasp of their forebears. I imagine their ancestors might even wonder if they are still truly human. If not, then humanity was overcome by its own unyielding nature and inquisitiveness. Whatever they have become, we are better off without their presence. They are unfeeling entities, most of them, warped and perilous. To merely glimpse one is said to induce insanity. So bizarre are they that no lesser intellect, such as a translation processor, can interpret their ancient languages. Whatever they may be, they defy the laws of our world as we perceive them. How do you know so much about them? I am a researcher of humankind. I gather artifacts like this one and examine them. However, even the little I've shared with you today may lead to nightmares. Mere awareness of these things can be perilous. Nilara will likely suffer the most, having viewed the text within this tome. Don't fret, the bad dreams will subside, as you all possess minds strong enough to endure the assault. Nevertheless, I do suggest keeping a familiar, comforting object nearby. The majority of the children remained motionless, yet Nilara felt compelled to pose one final inquiry. Since you're able to decipher their script, could you tell me the title of that book? The Call of Azathoth. Nilara recalled the silence that lingered in the aftermath of this quite clearly for the remainder of her life. It was only interrupted by one of her carefathers entering through the airlock. The children soon returned to their games. While the Wanderer had a brief, quiet conversation with her carefather, the nightmares appeared and faded as predicted, and all of them seemed more at ease and focused on the essential matters afterwards. A day eventually arrived when Nilara was summoned to a room with her mother and carefathers, and there stood the Wanderer. He presented her with an opportunity to study under his guidance, to truly explore other cultures, species, and people in depth, to learn about one particular group, albeit gradually and securely, humans. Time went by, and one morning they awakened to find that the Wanderer hadn't come back from his most recent journey. As more time passed, Nilara had to come to terms with the fact that he wouldn't be returning. Upon opening the shop, she discovered a note. It stated, "This is the last will and testament of..." At the bottom were two signatures. One said, "The Wanderer." The other was written in one of the human scripts she was least familiar with, but with some effort, she managed to decipher a name, yet somehow whenever she glanced away from her notes, it kept shifting in her mind to the Wanderer. While pondering this peculiarity, she found a note that had fallen from the papers. The message was penned in the most ancient and secure of human tongues, ethereal. It stated, "Nilara, to you I bequeath my library of books. Among that collection is a human volume in ethereal titled The Sacred Codex. It is also the sole illustrated human book in my possession. As you read it, remember that while we may have slain God, some of us still aspire to be his angels." Nilara's vessel trailed the energy pocket as it meandered through the galaxy, gliding along its periphery, gathering and then discharging its contents. As she had many times before, she wished her delvers might discover the most precious and sought-after of human artifacts, a flawless battery, capable of retaining all the energy it consumes, thereby enabling the ship to traverse cold space indefinitely. She longed for delving herself, sifting through the distinctive structures, crafted to withstand the deterioration that was no longer present in the cosmos. It was far from secure, however, and as the individual who could dedicate the most time to decoding human mysteries without experiencing adverse effects. As well as the most knowledgeable about them, she was too precious to endanger. They would not chance her being consumed by the perilous human-era creatures that occasionally still persisted, nor risk her sanity to the malicious and warped essence embedded in the very construction. Old Kalis, the most senior of the Delvers, even asserted that some relic zones still contained pockets of the old rules, areas where one could experience the alien sensation of gnawing hunger or genuine fear, or even the decay of entropy. Then again, he had also been known to claim that his brain was being consumed by tiny chickens, a human-era creature, and that they defecated out his nose, which was why he always sounded peculiar. It was generally accepted that Kalis had been at the job for too long, and his mental state was deteriorating. Shaking off these reflections, Nilara resumed her studies, decoding what was by far the most intricate and hazardous of human remnants, encrypted electronic data storage. Their own computers were inadequate for the task, so she had to examine the data manually, mapping it out and interpreting it herself. The most challenging aspect was the hostility and resistance that radiated from the storage device. It was encrypted, and due to the human ascended, that meant it literally didn't want you to decode it, as much as an entity with emotions, but no genuine mind or soul can want. For many cycles she had been laboring at this task, and ones and zeros haunted her dreams, crying out for her to forget them or face consumption. Occasionally in her slumber, she imagined she glimpsed the shape of a virus, poised to attack once she had decoded it, but thus far no such menace had materialized in her translations. Nevertheless, she kept a small battery at the ready, connected to a fire starter, to incinerate the virus, along with the rest of her work, should she uncover one, as she had learned the human firewalls used to do, albeit with greater sophistication. By the conclusion of this session, she had deciphered what seemed to be the beginning of a text file, and one which, once liberated from the clutches of encryption, appeared to emanate compassion, a rare yet cherished characteristic for human relics. It instilled in her a longing to uncover the other fragments, but she recognized the importance of not overexerting herself. Fatigue was no longer a physical attribute as it once had been, but it persisted as a mental one, particularly when dealing with human relics. Perhaps there was some validity to old Kalis's musings after all. The sentence of text she had deciphered stated, "First shall the angels vanish. The remainder would have to wait." Nilara stumbled out of her cabin, massaging her neck and lower back at the same time, staying upright mainly by keeping a hand on the wall. The brief journey to the mess is much easier than the even shorter trip from the wall to the table, where there's no support whatsoever. Vexra, the only other scholar aboard since Kalis had retired, passed her a bowl of NutriPaste without being asked. It understood how Nilara felt. The NutriPaste was flavorful today. The ship's AI enjoyed experimenting with different tastes, and not all of them were successful. And Nilara dug in with as much energy as she could gather. Nobody would perish without food, not in an energy pocket as they were at least, but it certainly helped, especially after the decoding session she had just completed. She'd deciphered a second sentence of the text document, and it lingered in her thoughts, even as she tried to focus on something else. Perhaps a conversation would help. As if reading her thoughts, Vexra chimed in, "The others haven't returned from delving yet, just us two." It held up the yarn it was knitting. "Do you like the colors? I'm going to put a— oh, well, never mind that. It's going to be a hat." That was one of the issues with using conversation as a distraction on this ship. Eventually, something human would come up. Occupational hazard of being obsessed. "It's really frustrating that we can't discuss our discoveries right away, though, isn't it?" "Oh, no," Vexra continued as Nilara clutched her head in pain. "But you were already back to thinking about it, weren't you?" Anger abruptly pushed the pain aside. "You were peering into my thoughts, Hara Vexra." "Okay, yes, but I was curious and you weren't supposed to mention it yet. And I still haven't grasped the sentence you decoded, so it was all pointless." Hadn't grasped it, even though it was echoing in her mind. The pain started to return as her outrage shifted into curiosity, the most perilous of emotions in her present condition. Should I do the thing? Nilara sighed, but it definitely appeared to be essential this time. Fine, let me finish my meal first. Going back to her food, Nilara consumed it quickly, as it was more secure. When finished, she gave a nod to Vexra, and then experienced the darkness enveloping her. Upon awakening, the revelations had diminished from a resounding echo to simply the faint reminder of a constant drip. As expected, Vexra was there waiting to prompt her in case it was less vivid. Well? They were situated in Vexra's quarters, adorned with depictions of humanity. Not humans, of course, as the only images of humans they had uncovered existed solely in Nilara's tome, the sacred codex, and she had prohibited their reproduction. But surrounding them on the walls were portrayals of humanity, of their constructions, their scientific pursuits, even 1 or 2 pieces of artwork. Hey, come on, tell me. First shall the angels vanish. Yes, I've heard that part. Vexra was always impatient. So unlike its people in every respect, it refused to even choose a gender, though Nilara had never really determined if that was because it saw no purpose in them, or because it never wished to grow up. Yes, but I figured out what it means. Oh, don't worry about that now. We'll ponder the meaning later. Just continue with the next part. Nilara shoots Vexra a dark glance, but proceeds nonetheless. First, will the angels disappear? Second, will the drowned king come back? What does that mean? I'm not sure. I grasp the words. A king is a type of leader, selected by something known as divine providence, and drowning is a way people can die. Hold on. My father nearly drowned once, and he didn't die, just ceased moving until we pulled him out of the water. Keep in mind, in the first world, death was permanent, so ceasing to exist was equivalent to dying for those people. That still gives me the shivers. Well, it's a title, so I suppose it's about someone who died by drowning while serving as king, and apparently he's meant to return. I'm not sure why that's significant, though. That wasn't quite as thrilling as I expected. You were all worn out and such. I mentioned that I had worked out the initial part, but it would be more precise to state that it worked me out. The angels are now gone. What? Angels aren't real, never were. Perhaps they weren't, but they are now. I encountered one, he instructed me, and he's no longer here. I thought you said you were trained by someone called Wanderer. The Wanderer, indeed, though I neglected to mention that he was human, wings included. My apologies. No, I get it, so was the hermit. And where is he? Maybe I'm wrong. No, you're right, the angels have vanished. This could be bad. It might be a coincidence. You mentioned there's no malice from the document, so it could simply be art. I hope you're correct, but I've got an odd sense it's much more than just art. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.